Yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Unintangibles. I am your host, Mo Aurora, and I need a haircut. Uh, Joining me on the show today, as always, I'll let him tell you how he thinks of his hair. But Jeff Shuella, welcome. Hi, Jeff. How's it going?
We're in sync with our haircuts. We need haircuts, and we should just say an early happy birthday to both of us. We're both.
That's right. That's right. We'll both be celebrating birthdays on Saturday. Both happen to share August 18th, so it's a special day in fantasy football analysis history. Well, we're gonna try to make it one anyway. But
just a bunch of regular guys, I guess. So
yeah, Jeff, any big plans for your birthday? Anything that you want to divulge?
I'm gonna try and turn off my phone. I would like to be a normal human being, and be fantasy free for at least 48 hours. So
yeah, that's a good gift to yourself, is to give yourself a break from this stuff, right? We're gonna get into some of some examples of like we're stretching for content here because we're ready for football. But yeah, if you can give yourself a break here and there, it's a good opportunity to do so.
I just find like I'm always checking notifications like so many times during the day. I mean, I bought an app. I got an app on my phone now. It tells me how much time I spend on my phone, and I'm logging like an average of 2.5 to 3 hours a day. So it's just
man, Jeff, you're killing me here. You're killing me.
Not healthy.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Like if people want to spend that much time watching the Unintangibles, like I mean, hey, whatever. Look, good content is good content, and I think it provides a service to people. But like, yeah, in general, you want to have a balance, right? So
people are watching. There are definitely people watching. So I'm excited, and I appreciate if you are. Please leave a comment. Just let us know that there's another soul out there who is enjoying this. So
yeah, please do. I'm not very good about the like and subscribe and download and follow, but like, yeah, please do all those things. Obviously,
I will do it. Actually, I will say right now, if you follow us on Twitter, I will follow you back on Unintangibles FF.
Hell yeah! All right, let's start the show. So I made reference to we're stretching for news here. We're the big news this week is actually Seattle Seahawks rookie running back Rashad Penny broke his finger and had to have surgery and will be out maybe until the start of the season. Maybe he's ready for week 1, maybe not. We don't know. Another rookie running back that people have had high hopes for. Suddenly, you got to manage those expectations. Jeff, what do you think?
I don't even know if he broke his finger, man. I think he broke his soul.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I think he was underachieving in the preseason so far, and maybe they didn't want the media to see him anymore for them.
Okay, well, listen. I'm willing to disbelieve anything, so I'm with you on that. But like, that seems like a long way to go to protect a pick. That's the thing. People talk about it like, oh, well, they drafted him in the first round for a reason. It was like, yeah, but if he's not good enough, then they won't start him. Like, I don't. People get carried away with that logic sometimes. Like that, they signed this guy for a reason. They drafted this guy for a reason. It's like the NFL players get cut on a dime. Like no contract is guaranteed beyond that day. I don't think draft position and stuff like that. Like it doesn't. I don't think it matters in that way. You know what I mean? Like you draft a running back in the first round. You draft somebody in the first round because you want him to be on your team for 5 years, not just this year. You know what I mean? Like it's like if we draft Sony Michel or Rashad Penny in the first round because we want him, we draft him for a reason to be a starting fantasy running back. But Bill Belichick drafts Sony Michel. He's got this year and beyond in mind.
I think Rashad Penny knows he's a 4th round pick in fantasy football. Like I think he knows he's already letting people down. And I think a lot of the players, they not that they care about fantasy, but they're aware of how they're being viewed and marketed basically.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I think these guys are aware of everything now. I think I have to assume that fantasy noise, like that's gotta be something that players work to shut out actively, because you can't think about stuff like that. That'll mess you up, right?
I mean, we could say we're stretching for news, but it is a little dull to look for news. But it's really the peak season for guys like me and you, who have our drafts right around the corner, and we're probably doing a lot more research.
Mm-hmm. It's coming. Well, here's what I mean by stretching is because you have guys getting hurt in camp. You also have guys that are showing up in camps and guys that honestly, I thought that we already buried them in some fantasy football graveyard, but they're back. But like just this week, I heard optimism about, for one, we'll go in order, but one is Brandon Marshall, wide receiver now in Seattle. Also, Dallas wide receiver, new Dallas Cowboy wide receiver, Tavon Austin, suddenly making noise. And then the one, I think the one that takes a cake is taking first team snaps in practice for the Indianapolis Colts. Kristen Michael, he's back. Ladies and gentlemen.
Team snaps because there's no one else there right now, I guess, and they were too late to Alfred Morris or something.
Well, yeah, and the thing, I'm sorry, Alfred Morris is now in San Francisco. I think the thing with Kristen Michael, I thought about that. It's because Kristen Michael's been a training camp preseason MVP, right? A couple of years, it seems like. And what was it? And it never worked out. What does that mean? That means he showed a lot of promise. He has a lot of athletic ability. Never quite put it together as a player, right? And now the Colts, they have Marlon Mack is injured. They have Robert Turman is there. These rookies, at some point, you're just looking for a guy who can practice so that the whole team can practice. You know what I mean? Which means Kristen Michael, whether or not he has any future with the Colts, he's good enough to come in and just give you a running back so that your whole first team offense. Now, Kristen Michael, the guy who never showed anything, is the wily vet in camp.
I think he could be like the Frank Gore of practice players, basically. He could do years.
Eric Dickerson of practice players. This guy ran for 2,000 yards every preseason. I mean,
his name is Christian Michael, which is kind of a pimp-ass name. If his name was Jim Dward or something, he wouldn't even – I don't know.
Kev with his name analysis again. This is like a –
Dward.
Alan Hurts does not sound like a star. Kristen Michael's a fan.
Yeah, but when your name is Rico Gathers, you're going to get a second look. No?
I think so, yeah. Rico Gathers gets a look. Rico Gathers gets treated like a pimp his whole life, and he just keeps building confidence. The confidence of a guy who's named Rico Gathers and gets treated like his name Rico Gathers.
Maybe last year's version of this is like Cooper Kupp.
People love Cooper Kupp.
People love Cooper Kupp. So
I have Cooper Kupp in my keeper league, and he's sort of extraneous on my roster. He's clearly a target for the people to trade for. I got multiple offers for Cooper Kupp all of a sudden. There's a bidding war for Cooper Kupp.
Good receiver, definitely. And he's got a great name. So, I mean, I think a name goes a long way in the NFL. I don't know.
Cooper Kupp sounds like a minor league hockey trophy. Doesn't it?
You got the Cooper Kupp?
Win the Cooper Kupp. Yeah, that's great,
That's amazing.
That's got to be like a pond hockey trophy or something.
Yeah, I guess they use Bauer. Bauer's like a big brand in hockey. So, yeah, the Bauer Cup, the Cooper Kupp.
Well, Cooper was also once.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right. Do they make the baseball gloves too, or that's?
I don't know if Cooper exists anymore, to be honest.
Oh, well.
I think they lost the skate wars, whatever it was.
I am scared. I mean, you mentioned Brandon Marshall, Mr. Stilts. I call him the Stilt Man, and Rashad Penny. I'm scared for Seattle this year, man. Honestly.
Yeah, definitely scared for Seattle, but. How much does it affect Russell Wilson? I still think Russell Wilson's good, and I imagine he's going to be good. And I assume that Russell Wilson will be good no matter who he's with. He'll make everyone good.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But that's crazy, though. If I'm literally saying, no, I don't want any of his targets, any of the guys he's going to play with, how can I think he's going to be good,
He'll find a way. He'll score 12 rushing touchdowns. He'll find his will to his will.
He will. Yeah, I mean, I believe in him. He's the only guy I believe in, though, on that team.
Yeah, that's how good he is, though. Yeah.
So let me see that. Let me ask you this. Let's say you see Brandon Marshall on the field, looking healthy, looking focused, good Brandon Marshall for a lot of his career, he was a great, great player. And now he's an old guy, but if he's an old guy who can be a wily old guy on the field, do you see any way that you might have interest in Brandon Marshall this season?
No. I think Jerron Brown's in front of him. I know Tyler Lockett's in front of him, and I think Baldwin. Obviously, I think Baldwin will be back. I don't think he's going to have a role. I don't think he's going to be on the roster come the end of the season.
Yeah,
my opinion.
Another guy he's just there to make sure to help practice go smoothly.
Yeah, I think so. He might be catching passes from Johnny Manziel in the CFL in a couple months.
I think Brandon Marshall's at a point where if his only option is the CFL, he'd probably just retire. He's in his 30s. He's had a nice little career,
Yeah.
Manziel's trying to get back to the NFL. Brandon Marshall, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's been to Montreal before and he likes it, but I don't think.
Probably. It's a great time. Anyways.
And Tavon Austin, I think his name just comes up because again, he's the guy that you can run a gadget play for in front of the media, and he's fast, and they'll get excited about it. And you realize, like, you know, nobody has any confidence in Dallas's passing offense this year, and so you know, at some point you're like, well, same thing. Somebody has to catch passes, right? And they're like, maybe on a team. People are making themselves believe that on a team where Allen Hurns is your best wide receiver, he's not that good. Michael Gallup, this rookie, he's not going to be that good. Maybe Tavon Austin has 4 trick plays this year, you know?
Yeah, he'll have a few good fantasy weeks, but that's another team I'm really worried about totally.
Yeah.
I know they have Brian Schottenheimer's the offensive coordinator in Seattle, and Jason Garrett I don't think he gets a lot of respect in the NFL.
Garrett deserves a lot of respect. I got to be honest, I don't know what Jason Garrett has done to keep his job as long as he has.
Well, you're a Cowboys fan, so you want to go off here for a minute?
Well, no, I'm not really. I just like he's an unremarkable coach. He does not seem like the kind of like, you know, the Cowboys have been good at times, have been good enough at times where it's like, oh man, they might have just been a head coach away from being a Super Bowl team. You know, I have no idea. I have no idea. He was a backup quarterback for the organization for a long time, and then he's an assistant coach and a coordinator. And now he's and it's like he must just know where the bodies are buried. You know what I mean? Like that's it. Like he's just, I don't know. He's the Jones family's like safety deposit box for their secrets. That's what he is.
How many teams has Tavon Austin been on? 2 other teams?
Nope, second team. First time he's moved from the Rams to Cowboys.
Okay. So look, I mean, if the Rams couldn't use him with Sean McVay, then that says something. So,
yeah, I think people anybody can look good in practice any day. You know what I mean? Somebody gets a cramp and steps out. Somebody else steps in. I mean, these are all professional athletes. They'll make great plays. Tavon Austin can make plays that nobody else on his team can probably make. So then when you see it in practice, you're like, oh my God, maybe they can use this guy. And you realize, oh no, we can't. We can't.
He was my last pick in a best ball draft, and that's as far as I'm going fantasy-wise with Tavon. So,
but you drafted him somewhere. I did not think that Tavon Austin would be getting drafted anywhere this year.
I drafted him in the 18th round. Yeah. I drafted him because I was running out of time, and he was the queued up guy. So I apologize for him being queued up, actually. So
there you go. But all right, so now let's talk about some. We have some more productive conversation to be had right now. Right now, we're talking about how much we're starving for real football, right? But we have a couple things we want to talk about today. We want to talk about Jeff has signed up for a couple things he wants to tell us about. We're going to talk about our favorite formats and rules and setups and stuff like that. But Jeff, you tell me that you have a stat that you have come across in your research.
So this is not something I found from an analyst. This is from owning this player and being frustrated with him at the end of the year. And I'm thinking of he's in consideration and I'm not taking him. Larry Fitzgerald is terrible in the fantasy playoffs. Almost, you go back last 3-4 years, he is a killer. So if there is some advice I can give from a non-expert, but someone who's been playing for a long time, since I guess 1995,
at least, yeah.
Then I would say that if you're in a 3 receiver league, that you start 3 receivers, you don't have to bank on guys that, you know, not saying you don't draft Larry Fitzgerald, but get guys who might be good end zone guys in the playoffs, like guys who just like a Kelvin Benjamin, even in the playoffs, like Demaryius Thomas. You know, these guys can, all you need for them is, you know, score a touchdown in week 14, and they're really helping your team out. So I think you can wait a little on receiver as usual, but Larry Fitzgerald, I'm not drafting him anymore. It's over.
All right. So here's the thing about that. You told me you had a stat, and you didn't give me any stats.
The stat is terrible. The stat is.
Here's a stat for you. Larry Fitzgerald sucks. Get him out of your life. There's a stat. Like, but okay. Maybe if you had told us some of his statistical performances in fantasy playoffs, I'd be on board with this. I'm sure it's true. I think your point though about.
Can I give you one theory?
Okay.
I just think it's age, man. I think he's 34. He's 35. Actually, he's turning 35 in a couple weeks, or he's turning 36. But
I don't think he's turning 36.
yeah, I think older players don't really perform well in the final weeks of seasons, and I'm just saying that based off of one thing that I saw. But
Yeah.
like, if you want stats, it's like honestly, it was like 2 for 21, 4 for 52, 3 for nothing. He didn't have really more than 65 yards in a playoff week the last few years. He did well in a couple week 17s, but not when you needed him.
Well, now, so last year, could it have been that the Cardinals weren't playing for anything those last few weeks? But like, has he had bad performances in the fantasy playoffs in seasons when the Cardinals were like in contention?
That's a good question, but I don't think they'll be in contention this year. So I think they'll be consistent with the last few years, at least.
Yeah, I think I'm not too big a fan of like best player on a bad team types that I've been talking about. I don't think they're very good in the fantasy playoffs. I think yeah, you want players that are playing for something, you know? Obviously, a lot of that makes sense anyway because like high scoring players are going to be on competitive teams, they're going to be playing meaningful games in December and January, yada yada yada, obviously, right? But like we all know fantasy football, you find guys from somewhere to plug in. And so I think yeah, I guess the idea of like somebody who can get you touchdowns, somebody who's like especially proficient at touchdowns, somebody who is on a team that's playing for something, you know. This may be for later on down the season when you're looking at trade deadline and waiver wire stuff, but basically just don't draft Larry Fitzgerald according to Jeff Shuela.
I play standard, and I don't know if you wanted to use this to get into the formats, but I'm not looking for Larry Fitzgerald anymore, especially for a standard league. So
well, the reason why I would look at Larry Fitzgerald is because I would be if you're drafting him as a wide receiver 1, that's a bit high for me. And if he's your wide receiver 2, I mean, he'll work. I think he'll work out for you, but I'm looking for upside with my wide receiver 2. I'm not looking for steady stability. I'm looking for because again, I think my wide receiver 2, that's the most replaceable spot in my life. Like people can have Justin Tucker on their team and have an edge. You know what I mean? But like my second wide receiver, I feel like whoever I draft, if it doesn't work out, that's fine. Somebody from my bench or somebody from waivers, somebody from a trade, I can throw him in there. And so I wouldn't want Fitzgerald because I wouldn't want a stable, steady, low upside wide receiver 2. You know what I mean? I don't want 100 catches for 1,000 yards.
yeah.
You know?
You can make up on that position, the wide receiver too. You know what's kind of funny is that like they say quarterback is deep, receivers deep, tight end is meaningless. It's really like running back is the only important position in fantasy football, and your wide receiver 1. And that's
yeah, and that's kind of why I don't agree with all the fantasy football analysis out there. That's why I'm bullish on getting one of those top quarterbacks or tight ends. Not, I mean, don't go crazy doing it, but like, you know, if you have like like I said, there's what, maybe 15, 16 running backs that you're like pretty confident in. After that, it starts to fall off, right? There's maybe 10 or 12 wide receivers that I feel are really, really confident. There's 2 tight ends like that, 3 maybe, you know?
You
3 quarterbacks maybe, 2, you know?
2 of those 13, 14 running backs, you get 1 of those 10 receivers, and if you get lucky enough to get a tight end, a 1 or a 2, like Kelsey Gronk. And I'm
like, so you look at even in the smallest league, half the league, in the smallest 18 league, half the league will have invested in Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Gronk, and Kelsey at their prices.
Yes.
Do you want to be one of the 4 teams that don't have them? You're like, look at me, I got Matt Stafford as my quarterback, and I have a bunch of guys on my bench that I can't start.
In an 8-team league, I'm drafting Aaron Rodgers and Gronk.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I just think like I'm in a 16-team league. And sure, Aaron Rodgers goes for a lot more money than Matt Stafford. But that's, it's like, look at it this way. It's like, let's say you wanted to ride on the Tour de France right? The bike rate, the bikes that they ride in the Tour de France, like don't even show up unless your bike costs like $2,000, right? But the guy who's gonna win the Tour de France, his bike costs $10,000. You know, it's like the marginal increase. It keeps getting harder and harder to like get more and more production out of players. You know, so sometimes you got to pay the money, and I mean, you got to spend it on somebody.
That's
You know?
what when you go auction, and it's true. I mean, you build the team based on the players that you want. You don't have to wait in line like at a draft. Like I've never actually done an auction.
Mm-hmm.
So tell the viewers that why you like the auction so much.
Okay, so let's just get into this. Let's talk about our formats in general. So I like auction over draft because you have a shot at every player. You know, it's up to you to decide how much they're worth it to you, and I like that. I like the fact that there isn't as much waiting around. You know, maybe I mean there kind of is. There can be as well, but like there isn't. So there isn't like I draft and now I wait and then this guy's going. Like you can be involved anytime you want. It's more dynamic, I think, than a draft because a draft has an order which lends to a certain amount of predictability. Whereas with an auction, there's so many variables, right? Because instead of drafting a player, you nominate a player, and then whoever's interested in, you have no idea who might be interested. You have some maybe, but like, people get in, and then depending on how much money you spend here, you can go into a draft thinking I'll draft this guy in the third round and I'll draft this guy in the seventh round, right? You can spend the equivalent of third round money on that guy in an auction, or you can try to spend the equivalent of third round money, but you end up, he ends up going for $5-10 more, and now you can't get that other guy. Or do you, in the moment, do you say no? I'm going to bow out of the bidding for this guy because I want to get somebody later. And it's like it's everyone's adapting on the fly. It's so exciting. It's so much fun.
When you do the auction, is it live in person or do you actually do online auction?
We've moved into online in the last couple of years, but for a long time, like for me, it was a good 10 years of being in this league where I was like attending a draft party, attending an auction party, and it was no joke. It was great. It was.
Do you have to like hire an auctioneer, or like how does that work exactly?
There are teams in the league that have co-GMs.
Okay.
So one of them would usually be the auctioneer, and they would rotate. Other people would be like, "Oh, I spent all my money. I'm not going to be bidding on anyone for a while. I'll take over for the next little bit."
I can't do co-GMing anymore. I used to be a co-GM, and like it's fun because it's a way to connect with someone and talk to someone that maybe I don't know you wouldn't talk to them as much about. But if you want to make a decision and the other person wants to make doesn't want to do what you want to do, it just kind of taints the whole thing. So,
I mean, that's why I think don't run a team with your friend. Run a web show with your friend instead. That's where we go. All right, Jeff, so let's talk about formats. Standard versus PPR. What do you got?
So I'm only standard because, the reason I pulled out this magazine here, it says 1995 Fantasy with Steve Young on the cover. There is no PPR, Mo.
Yeah.
There's no PPR. I never. I kind of find PPR a little cheap too because if it's Monday Night Football, there's 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and Trent Taylor catches a pass for no yards, and you win your matchup because you have Trent Taylor. It's just it's not the right way to win. Personally, like I don't mind if you want to give a point for every 10 yards. That's fair, but I think standard really rewards players who really excel on the field. So that's touchdowns, and that's high good performances.
Yeah, I think moving the ball down the field, that's what matters, and I think. PPR is arbitrary. It just decides this way of receiving the ball is valued, whereas this other way is not. I think that's dumb. I think just like all the knocks that you have on people. Some guy, he's a deep threat, but he doesn't run a complicated passing tree. He doesn't run the whole tree. Or another guy, he's wily, third and six. People want to attach all these storylines to a player, and I think. Let the usage speak for itself. You let the usage speak for itself. If a guy is always open, then he'll have 100 catches. If a guy is a deep threat, he'll have a bunch of touchdowns, long-range touchdowns. If a running back can catch well, he'll catch passes. If a running back can, he won't. If he can run straight ahead, he will. Let the yard sort itself out. I think what PPR does is it puts more points in the game, which makes it more interesting, which allows more and more people who play fantasy football to be interested. It's all just to get more and more people interested, right? But the more it drifts to the middle, the less the pursuit becomes. Like, I think you and I play competitively, and we're in leagues where everyone's smart and active and like is really truly doing too much to pretend like they're a general manager. But the way I equivalent the equivalent I come up with is, it's kind of like how in the NHL and hockey, when they said ties are a problem. So now they've created this crazy overtime loss shootout system, and all it does, it builds more. There's more points available, so more teams are like technically in the playoff race late into the season, but none of those teams are any good, and the actual like playoff, like leading up to the playoffs, it's not good anymore. It's boring. It's just like, I gotta care about this team that's garbage? No. And that's what happens with fantasy football. All these mediocre teams, it's a race to the middle. That's what it is. And like, I think PPR is a format for everybody to have a chance to play. Standard is a format for if you're good. I mean, first of all, there's still a shit ton of luck anyway, but you still have some control. You can be good and win, you know?
I don't know. That's very well said. I like that argument. I don't even know who started PPR, but like, I don't really want to play fantasy football to get excited about owning and drafting Jarvis Landry. I'm sorry.
It's boring, man. That's the thing. All these guys that have such a hard on for all these like slow, untalented guys who manage to get open and catch small passes. Like, you know what it is? It's because those are the guys in the NFL that most people out in the world playing fantasy football can actually fantasize about being, you know? Yeah. That's the thing. I can't watch Derrick Henry run the ball and be like, oh yeah, I could do that too. Like, Derrick Henry is a train. You know what I mean? Like, he is the locomotive of, like, it's amazing, right? But you know, you see some dumpy old guy who, like, he manages to still get open. Like, oh yeah, I could do that. I could imagine myself as being like, we can't, but like, those are the guys that people relate to. So I think we're doing it right, man. I like Standard. It rewards scoring. It rewards, you know, good yardage. Yeah.
And, I think that's the excitement about fantasy football.
I think so. And I don't mind it being hard, man. Like I said, you don't need to convince me to play. I don't need the rules to be set up to keep my interest. I'm interested all the time, you know? And I think if you have that level of interest, if you're more than above average interested in fantasy football, you should not want PPR. Because if you claim to be a diehard fantasy football fan, but like PPR is your preferred format, that just means you like playing and being in a league and finishing 7-6 every year, and that's it. And that sucks. I don't care.
I don't want to be that degenerate to cheer for that last catch on Monday Night Football. I don't want to be sitting on my couch like asking, praying to the heavens to see if Gio can catch one more -2 ball. You know? Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So listen, if you're watching the show and you play PPR, like, sorry, don't listen to us. What do we know, right? But here's how you can do it. You and I happen to disagree on something. That's okay. When we talk about rankings and standings and all that stuff, if in your mind you keep saying you want to say actually in PPR ... then do that. You can adjust whatever we have to say. Adjust those in your mind if it's PPR. You can do the math yourself. It's fine. You know.
I'm sticking with Standard.
Yeah.
You want to make a guess where we're at time wise right now? Because
I feel it feels long. I feel like we're approaching 30.
Yes.
We're approaching 30.
Yeah, I'd say we're at 24, 25 minutes.
Okay, good. I was worried. Okay. So anything else about formats? Any other strong opinion?
No, I think Standard's the way to go. And I like auction. I've never done it before, but I really like that whole thing.
I don't dislike a draft. Don't get me wrong. I like a draft. I'm not gonna banish people who draft to the same depths of hell that I banish PPR fans. But I prefer an auction to a draft. I think it's great. Also, because as far as like if you play in any kind of keeper dynasty format, I prefer auction because then it's just a salary cap. You're managing a roster with a salary cap. It's great. Like this league that I've been in, it's perfect. I love it. You know.
I don't even want to get started on asking you about the Reality Sports Online website, but have you seen it? Have you seen it?
I'm not a degenerate like you are. You know that.
I'm not going to do it, but
Yeah, but you're the one who tells me about this stuff. Just so you know.
Very real, man. The only reason I know about it is because I listen to a million podcasts a day.
Yeah.
And this is not good for my health, dude.
No.
But
No. You know what's going to happen? At some point, we're going to be betting on Madden simulations, and then that'll be so easy to fix that the whole thing will just be, awful. It'll be awful. This is what happens when you play DFS too much, guys. That's what it's going to lead to. It's my paranoia about the horrible future of gambling.
We're here to give you our opinions, but we're also here to share with you our stories about being as into fantasy as we are. Like we're very enthusiastic about it.
Oh, man. Absolutely. But I've stepped out of weddings to answer trade. Yeah, I've been rude, man. All right. Let's get to this. Let's try to wrap this up pretty soon. Okay, so we're at about 25 minutes. Thank you for joining us on the Unintangibles. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back on Monday. Hope to see you then. All right, take care, guys.
Yeah, look at that. That's beautiful.
Nailed it.